Hello, welcome to the final instalment of the coastal environments videos I've been doing for you. Hopefully they've been helping you with revision so far. We're going to look at the final thing to do with coasts, which is coastal management. So we have looked at coastal erosional processes and the landforms that are created because of different processes. What we need to look at now, though, is what we can do to actually manage the coast to prevent damage to people and their belongings, and try and kind of deal with the processes that are going on along the coast on a day-to-day basis. So there's three kind of strategies that we look at which are similar to what we look at with rivers. We look at soft engineering, which is where we're trying to do the best we can with the coastal environment, but without actually changing anything as such. So this is a sustainable approach. It's kind of working with nature to reduce the risk of erosion and flooding. Hard engineering, though, is the opposite. It's where we're putting man-made structures in place to control what's going on. So instead of kind of dealing with it in a natural way, we're dealing with it in an artificial way. And then managed retreat is where we're kind of letting nature do what it does best, erode and flood, as it should be doing. And so we're going to look at these three different ways with different types of strategy and what those strategies can actually bring to an environment. So this is just a quick table to show you what you need to be understanding for each of these main groups of strategies. So you need to know what the strategy involves, what it actually does. You need to know the benefits and then the costs, which are negatives. So we're going to look at the different things. So we're going to look at seawalls, groins, rock armour, gabions, beach nourishment, reprofiling, regeneration, dune regeneration, and coastal realignment and monitoring. So beach nourishment and reprofiling is where you are adding sand and material to the beach itself. And this is to make it wider so that it can absorb more of the wave's energies to reduce the erosion of the actual coastline itself and to prevent damage to towns and cities that are along the coastline. So here you can see that there's been sand added to this beach. There's also a seawall, which we'll talk about in a minute. But you can see it's wider and it's a lot more sand there to take up the waves' energy. It also creates slightly more of an area where the sea can come in and potentially flood before flooding the rest of the town which is behind it. Reprofiling a beach also might involve actually changing the way that it looks. So sometimes you might have a narrow beach that they want to make wider to absorb more of the sea's energy, and so it will make a wider beach instead of a narrow beach. But it's basically adding sand to it, and this is soft engineering because we're using what nature would do normally, but we're speeding up nature's process. We're not actually building anything to damage or change the natural processes that are going on. We're just making the processes last a little bit longer. We also have an example here of what's going on. So you can see this is a dredger, and what happens is that this is sucking up sediment from from seabed, I should say, and throwing it onto the beach, spraying it onto it to make that beach wider. So there's more sediment here. The problem with it is that although it does create a wider, sandier beach, which can then absorb that energy and reduce the risk of flooding and erosion, it costs a lot of money and it has to be repeated on a regular basis because that sand is just going to be removed within a couple of weeks, and so it'll have to be then replaced, and so it's very, very costly. Also, as they're dredging up the material from the seabed, it can destroy habitats and ecosystems on that seabed, and it can even kill animals and organisms that live there as it's being sucked up and then spurted out onto the beach. A hard engineering strategy is sea walls. So you can see here people walking along sea walls. You may have walked along a sea wall. If you've been to Blackpool, you will have walked along the sea wall when you were going along the coastal front. And these are artificial structures, man-made structures you can see here, that are built to basically hold back water, but also to take a lot of the force of the sea as it crashes onto that concrete platform. You can see that they are stepped, and that's to help also increase the surface area where the waves hit, and therefore it reduces the sea's erosive power. They're also recurved at the top, so they've got a curved back point here, and that's to show that it kind of fires the wave back on itself as it breaks, and it reduces the wave energy. As I said, it reduces the erosive power of the waves, which is great. It also can create like a tourist walkway, which can increase areas of tourism, create like sea walks and things like that. But the problem with seawalls is they are very costly. They cost millions and millions of pounds. The Blackpool seawall, which was built in the mid-2000s, cost in excess of £200 million for that length of seawall. And so it's very, very costly and takes a while to build. Also, they can erode and get destroyed quite easily, so they have to be maintained very, very regularly. Another example of hard engineering is a groin. These are basically concrete or wooden pillars that go out into the sea, and these stop longshore drift from happening, or reduce longshore drift. As what happens is it traps sediment in between these barriers. So on the bottom image you can see kind of a row here of fencing, and in the background there's another row and there's another row, and it traps the sediment and makes wider patches of beach, which is a good thing because it reduces erosion. But the problem is that actually it can starve the beach further down. Remember, longshore drift is about moving sediment along the coastline in a zigzag motion. So if it traps it in one area and it can't move past that area, then it means that the next area won't have the sand and the sediment, which means then the next area is more prone to erosion. Rock armour is another example of hard engineering. See, this is where rock armour has also been used as a groin going out into the sea, but normally rock armour is along the front here, and it's where boulders or sometimes big concrete blocks are thrown onto the seafront to again prevent erosion. They are costly. They can be moved around quite a bit by heavy storms, which is an issue. They have to be replaced, and they're quite dangerous. And if you've not got areas where you can get down onto the beach, such as walkways between them, it can actually cause issues. It can cause health and safety issues, but also it means that sometimes beaches can't be used, which also can lead to issues in tourism. Managed retreat is not hard or soft engineering. It's just kind of letting nature do what it does. And so managed retreat here you can see is where you're letting nature take back what once was its. So you can see here there was a sea wall, which is the green kind of raised bit. They've opened it up to allow it to naturally flood and erode inland. Well, the problem with that is that you're going to end up having to move this town at some stage, because eventually if you just let it manage retreat, it will take over that town. It might take over farmland. It might destroy tourist attractions. And so therefore managed retreat, although it's good because it allows nature to do what it does best, it can cause those other issues further down. Another soft engineering approach is dune regeneration. So this is a really good example here, where they've built from fences and then they've started to plant marram grass. So remember, marram grass is really key for sand dunes to actually survive. If they haven't got vegetation growing on them, they won't survive, they will blow away. And so by creating an area of replanted marram grass, it means that that dune can stabilise. It means that then that dune can grow larger. It means that that dune can then prevent erosion further on the coast. It also prevents flooding further on along the coastline and inland. Dune regeneration also might mean building barriers so that tourists can't trample on that marram grass, so it allows it to regenerate and rebuild itself. It's important to understand these processes because sometimes in exams you are asked to explain which thing you think is best. Is it hard engineering? Is it soft engineering? Is it dune regeneration? Is it sea walls? And you need to do some decision making. And so the next few slides is just some decision making activities and also to show you different coastal features on a map. So you can see here a nice map of Druridge Bay, which is along the east coast of England. And you've got here a wide sandy beach and not many people living in this area. It's mainly farmland that you can see by these kind of squares of land. And underneath you've got different kind of values of the land and what it's used for. And here, you've got to decide, would you protect this or would you manage retreat it? Well, I personally would not protect it because it's not really got much value to the land. There's not many houses around. There's not many people living there. And I would let it manage retreat, this area. But unfortunately, you would lose the farmland and you might lose a couple of homes, but you would create habitats as a result. And also it then is cost effective. So you'd have to make some type of decision potentially in your exam about that. And paper 3, you might be asked to make a specific decision about what to do in a certain scenario. This is another example along a coastline in Whitley Bay. Again, pretty much the same stretch of coastline. But here you can see loads of housing and road links, so lots of infrastructure and different things that are there. Now this one, you can see that the house prices are more expensive. The density of people is a lot higher. So you've got to decide, would you protect this or manage retreat it? Well, you'd have to protect it, otherwise you're going to have to rehome loads of people and you have to recompensate them for different things, and you have to change businesses and help businesses to recover. So you'd have to protect this area, and it's worth protecting it. Another one here, this is along Middlesbrough, again along the northeast coast. This is going along the river, it's probably the River Tees. Again, would you protect it or manage retreat it? You've got to look at the types of businesses, the cost of it. It's kind of a difficult this one. You've got chemical industries and football and things going along here. Well, would you allow it to flood, or would you have to protect it, or would you do a mixture of both? It's a difficult decision to make. You'd have to weigh up the pros and cons. Personally, I think I'd let part of it manage retreat and part of it I'd protect. So I'd protect the areas that are worth quite a lot of money in terms of income for the economy, and I'd let the other areas maybe erode. But again, you'd have to weigh up the pros and cons. I think this is the final one. So again, looking at the different land uses and things. So you've got, looks like a caravan park here and here. Again, house prices 130,000 to 800,000, but there's not really many houses. It's mainly caravans in this area. You've got to think about the population, so it's 2,300 in that area. Would you let it retreat? Would you protect it? Again, it'd be up to you to work the pros and cons. I would personally maybe protect a bit of it, maybe where the caravan park is, but then I'd let the rest retreat. Or actually, you could think, well, actually, no, you can move this caravan park inland a bit further at a small expense compared to how much you'd have to pay for a massive sea wall or loads of groins to be put in place. But again, you'd have to weigh up the pros and cons and make that decision. Just quickly as well on this one here, on a map to notice where a beach is, you can see a beach because it's normally coloured like it is on here, like an orangey yellow colour on it. And to go back to a few other ones here, so on this coastline you've got quite a lot of headlands and cliffs, and also wave cut platforms, which is shown by these symbols on a map. And then again another beach along this area here. These symbols here are called for like salt marshes. So it's like little grass on either a light green or it shows here an orangey yellow background. I hope this video has helped. If we can help any other way, please email your teacher or talk to us. We'll see what we can do to help. Good luck, and we hope to see you soon. Bye bye.